So nice to see all these faces. Hi there, everybody. Hi, hello. I hope that you are ready to have a lovely evening with us. If you want to put your camera on, we'd be happy to see your face. Um, let's see. Are we good? All right. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So we are Teach the Shoah, and I am really delighted to have you here. I am recording the session. This is for our purposes because some of your friends or some of David's family who can't be here tonight are going to want to his listen to his story, and I am messing up my thing even as we're sitting here for whatever reason. I don't know what I just did. I want to make that go away. So frustrating. Okay, so let's get down to the brass tacks of what we're doing. I'm recording. I would like to ask you if you are good with the chat to write your name in the chat. We can see who you are, actually. I can see Debbie and Emily and Kay and Margie and Linda and Claudia and Miriam. But if you want to add in the chat something like, I'm in Baltimore, or I'm coming in from New York City, or wherever you want to say, or maybe you want to say, I am David's cousin, or something like that. That would be great as well. Okay, I'm going to do a quick little share screen with you. Oh my goodness, everything here is doing what I don't want it to do. Why am I in this world like this? I do apologize. I was beautifully set up. All right, get back to Zoom and let's pull up the screen so I can tell you who we are and what we're doing tonight. Okay. So, who are we? We are Teach the Show. Oh, I'm glad Kathy's here. We work to ensure that the story of the Holocaust remains relevant and resonant. And how do we do this? How are we challenging ignorance and hate? We are teaching people and sharing testimony-based stories. We're trying to build personal connections to the stories, to the lessons of the Holocaust, and we want to do this work across generations and across backgrounds. And okay, I'm looking at that. So, what else are we doing? We have all kinds of other programs, as you can see here. We have a storyteller bureau. We train our storytellers. David has taken that class. Claudia has taken that class. Linda has taken that class. I have taken that class. We also do all kinds of different programs, and you can find more on our website, teachtheshoah.org. Who am I? I am Tanya. Let me stop the share. I am Tanya Wisoker. I am a storyteller myself. I'm an instructor. I'm a coach. I'm a board member. And tonight we have Lynn Feldman, our historian, scholar, second in command for all things Teach the Shoah. And we also have our teller, David Halpern, who is up on your screen as well. And I'm going to say that you may or may not have done a Teach the Shoah program before, but what we do here is special. I believe that storytelling is kind of like a sacred tradition. We have a teller, we have an audience, and together we embrace this story, we listen together, we notice together. And I think we should prepare ourselves just a little bit. Prepare ourselves to receive the story, to notice our own feelings. How do we do that? We pay attention to our breathing. I'm having a heck of a time tonight with my slides, which is terrible. What I'd like you to do is just close your eyes briefly if you're comfortable with that. Pay attention to your breathing. Take a deep cleansing breath. Let out a breath. Notice your posture. I think it's recommended that your feet are on the floor, that you're seated solidly in your chair. Maybe stretch your neck a little. Let the stress of the day just fall away. We're going to be present with one another here. And as you take a deep breath in, you are flooding your every soul with oxygen, your every cell and your soul with oxygen down to the tips of your fingers. And when you let your breath out, you're just removing all that carbon dioxide that you don't need right this minute. You're actually nourishing yourself with these deep breaths. Okay. We are going to, for this evening, we're going to highlight one person's story, the story David's going to share with us. But I think you're going to see how one person's story affects so many other people's stories. And when you listen to it, you become part of that chain of story. Oh my God, I'm having the worst time tonight with Zoom. It's just giving me so many problems. So David's going to tell the story. I will introduce him. David will tell the story. You'll have some time to appreciate him, to tell us what you noticed about his telling, what resonated with you. He will tell us a little bit about how he developed the story. He has some photos to share with you. We have time for some questions before we close out in about an hour. I also want to tell you, everybody reacts differently to Holocaust stories. So you should be prepared. Give yourself space to listen. Put aside your phone. You can just let it go for just this 1 hour and just be here with David and with me and with all of these people in front of you. Let me pull up a slide here. And if you have any questions, you can just call them out because I might not notice you. Lynn will see you. So, who is our teller? David Faust Halpern. He is the son of Holocaust survivors, and David was born after the war in Marseille in France. David was a dentist, a practicing dentist, which is always a funny thing for me to say, in Columbia, Maryland for 40 years. He and his wife, their two daughters, the daughter's husbands, and the granddaughter all live right nearby, some of you, in Columbia, Maryland. David's a member of the Howard County Holocaust Remembrance Committee and has been doing this for over 15 years. In addition to that, David has graduated from our speaker program from our storytelling course. Okay, so Rose or Rosette or Rozia, as she was known as a young woman, as a girl. Rozia was born in 1918 in Rosette, Poland, to David. I'm telling you, my mouse is killing me. It's really hard. To David and Devorah Faust. Now, in Rohatyn, in 1941, the Nazis created a ghetto there, a ghetto for their Jews. And as the months went by, or over time, the Jews would be periodically and very methodically removed for execution. And Rozia, for 4 years, evaded capture and stayed alive in hiding. At the end of the war, she was one of 34 survivors from the entire town. After the war, Rozia and her husband lived in France and then emigrated to the United States in 1952. So I think we are about ready. I think David is probably quite ready to tell. And I would like you to make sure your mic is off And as for further comments in the chat, I know we love to say good job or wow, that was scary or whatever we want to say, but I ask you to please wait until after David has finished telling because the notifications in that Zoom box can be super distracting to the teller. If you want to say something specific to me or to Lynn, you can send a specific comment to one of us. David, how do you feel? Are you good? I'm going to spotlight you in a moment and give you a little introduction. You good?
I just wanted to make sure everyone can hear my voice.
Oh, you're getting a lot of thumbs up. All right, so let's spotlight you, and I'm going to give you a little introductory speech, and then I will mute myself, okay? Okay. The story David tells tonight about Rozia focuses on events beginning in June of 1941 in Rosette in Poland, which at that time was occupied by the Soviet army. And as the story opens, Rozia is in the home of her parents.
Hearing distant explosions and seeing flashes of light in the sky, Rozia Faust stands by her window, fear on her face. Suddenly, she hears a knock at the door. She rushes down and opens the door, and she sees Clara Halpern, breathless, with a fear of panic on her face. Her hands clasped together, and Rozia is fearing what she's about to say. Clara says, The Russians, the Russians are retreating from the Nazi army. Vilek, your betrothed, my son, and his brother Yitzhak are being taken by the Russians to save them from the Nazi army. They can't leave the recruiting station, but Vilek wants to see you. You must come with me. Rozia doesn't even think. She grabs a coat. She rushes out with Clara. They make their way towards the recruiting station, and they see chaos. Men running all around. Carts with horses, and they're loading stuff into the carts. They can't find Vilek, but they see him. He has a dazed look on his face, as if he doesn't know what's really going on, but he sees Rozia, and he rushes towards her and embraces her in his arms, strokes her head, trying to comfort her as she's screaming, Why? Why must you go? Why? Vilek looks down and strokes her head and looks at his mother and said, We will be reunited. We will be reunited. Until then, you must survive and take care of each other. As he lets her go and goes to his cart with his brother, loads their belongings on the cart, and they start disappearing into the distance, Rozia is still screaming, My world is being destroyed. Why? Why must you leave? As she's crying and turns around to Clara, she suddenly says, He did say we will reunite. He did say we will reunite. So we do need to survive and take care of each other until that time. Deep in my heart, I know we will be reunited. Bombings continue for about 2 more weeks, but then there's a silence, a heavy silence. Rozia feels it on her chest. She's like suffocating. She wants to cry out, but she thinks, who will hear? Who will care? She hears outside the sounds of boots on the street. She almost feels that pounding on her chest, the sound of the pounding boots. She looks out the window and she sees the Nazi army coming into town. And the Ukrainian people are in the windows showering them with flowers and cheering. The Nazis waste no time. They create a ghetto for all the Jews, and they even bring Jews from surrounding villages. Multiple families are put into one house, crowded, cramped living conditions. Food becomes scarce. Rozia's mother, Dvora Faust, goes out to find whatever is being rationed, and Rozia sees her coming back to the house with a smile on her face because she has a loaf of bread. But as soon as she gets into the house, she shares horrifying news. that the Nazis have allowed the Ukrainians to do whatever they want to the Jews. Take their houses, take their belongings, beat them if they wish. Dora suddenly realizes that her husband, David Faust, is not in the house. And she sends Rozia out to find him, and Rozia sees him lying in the gutter, badly beaten, unable to get up. Rozia and her mother struggle to get David into the house. Before he even has a chance to describe what happened to him, they hear screaming and shouts coming from the back of the house. Rozia and her mother go to the back and look out the window into the courtyard. And there, the synagogue, the wall of the synagogue, is lined with rabbis Tuman and Spiegel and all the elders, the leaders of the Jewish community, facing the wall with their arms up. Ukrainian youths are taunting them, yelling obscenities, plucking their beards. One shouts out, "Let's take all their valuables, put them all in the synagogue, and then set the synagogue on fire." Rozia, in a panic, thinking a massacre is about to occur, she suddenly sees a physician, Dr. Kudish, quickly leave the scene, and she hopes he's getting help. He did. He found a German officer he had done medical training with, who sends soldiers to the scene, and the soldiers say, "This was not authorized. You must disperse." Then they turn to the hostages, and they say, "We will let you go too, but you first must bring us coffee and cocoa and sugar and soap, and then we will let you go." The townspeople gather the stuff together and they bring it to the officers, and they release them from being hostages. Rozia thinks, is this the hell that's starting for us? One day, outside the Faust house, a Ukrainian woman is searching for David Faust, the musician. David sees her and recognizes her, and he comes out and says, "Is that little girl from Chechnya that I used to teach music to?" The woman says, "Yes, Mr. Faust, I'm Anna. I was Anna Kozmina. Now I'm Anna Bachinska, and I have children. And I was wondering, would you give them music lessons?" David thinks, and fearing for his family's survival, goes to Anna and says, "If you will hide and shelter my daughter Rozia," and he puts his hands symbolizing the Kohanim, "by the authority of me being a Kohen, descended from the holy priests of the Jewish faith, if you hide my Rozia, I will bless you and your family forever." Dvora Faust rushes forward and kisses Anna, pleading, "Please, please, take my Rozia and save her." Anna agrees, knowing full well the penalty of death for hiding a Jew, because she is the wife of the Ukrainian police commandant. However, she brings Rozia into her home and gives her the papers of a deceased Ukrainian woman named Darka Vasilkevich, and she becomes a seamstress in their house. Vilek's mother had predicted, "You will survive and my son will be waiting for you." This righteous act of Anna gives Rozia a thread of hope for survival. It's July 1944, and after 4 years of evading capture, witnessing atrocities to her family and the Jews of Rohatyn, surviving Gestapo interrogations, Rozia returns to the deserted town of Rohatyn after learning that the ghetto has been totally liquidated. She hides in the attic of an abandoned house, and bombings start to occur, pummeling the town. And the house where she's hiding, the roof collapses, showering her with debris. She makes her way towards the front of the house and looks out a small crack in the wall and sees trucks with German soldiers rapidly leaving Rohatyn. And Rozia thinks, Is it possible that the Soviet army is returning? Suddenly, there are more explosions and gunfire. She decides she must leave the attic and she crawls to the basement. Another explosion and water pipes burst. Water's flooding the basement. Rozia knows she has to try to get out and she tries to make her way towards the door. She hears outside Russian voices. Comrades, come out! But before she can even get to the door, it bursts open and Russian soldiers come in with bayonets pointed at her, shouting, Lauzi Bandarivka! Out! And Rozia remembers she's wearing Ukrainian clothing and they must think she's a Ukrainian nationalist fighter. They bring her before the commander, who looks down at her and says, Who are you? She looks up and the only thing she can whisper is, Shema Yisrael, Baruch haba, welcome. There's silence. And the commander says, Let her loose. She's a Jew. The Russians spread the word that whoever still is in hiding can come out, and Rozia finds out that only 34 Jews out of almost 9,000 that were in the ghetto had survived. She sees a childhood friend, Clara Weisbaum, and goes up to her and says, I'm alone. And Clara said, Not anymore. You can live with me. Clara's apartment is across the street from the Soviet security office, NKVD. And Rozia gets a job at the post office. Mr. Kornblum, the head of the post office, gives her the job of sorting through letters, looking to see if any are from Jews. One day, a woman that Rozia recognizes as Comrade Anna Hohol, who was a former Soviet Senate representative, comes to Rohatyn and to the post office, and she announces that she's tasked with finding out who lives in the newly occupied towns that Russia is taking over from Poland, and was asked to bring certain letters from Jews to the town. And she says, I have a letter specific for someone. And she turns to Rozia and says, Are you Rozia Davidovich, Rosalind Davidovich, daughter of David? Rozia says, Yes, I am. And Anna says, Do you know Volodya Davidovich? I think his last name is Galperin. Rozia thinks, Volodya, well, that could be another name, Vilek maybe, and Galperin, well, the Russians change H's to G's. Could be Vilek Halperin. Is he alive? And Anna says, yes, he's alive. He's in Kyrgyzstan. If you meet me at the NKVD building and bring me a comb and snowshoes for this information and for a letter that I have for you, I will give it to you. Rozia quickly leaves and looks for these items, finds them, and brings them to Anna. She tears open the letter and she sees the words, I long to see you again. Your place is with me. We must reunite. Come find me. Kyrgyzstan awaits. Rozia realizes that in order to make the journey to Kyrgyzstan, she has to obtain 3 documents. An employment release from where she was working, an official visov, or an invitation from Vilek, and most important, an official transfer permit to be able to travel. She has to get it from the NKVD building, and she goes there and pleads her case. The official there says, what, are you out of your mind? The war is still going on. You want to travel across Russia to Kyrgyzstan? Rozia begs him, say, I am only one of 34 survivors here, and I must find my betrothed, the love of my life, Vilek, who's in Kyrgyzstan. The official says, and he whispers, Vilek, is his Jewish name maybe Velvel? Rozia says yes. The official says, I recognize that name because I am also a Jew. I will help you. He grants her the permit, but she knows she needs money for the train ticket. Outside, she cries. Mr. Hamburger, who is a distant cousin of Vilek's, sees her and says, well, I heard about the letter. I hope you are going to find Vilek. Rozia cries, I want to, but I have no money. Mr. Hamburger says, I will give you the money. Consider it a wedding present. Before she leaves, she visits a site where her family and 3,500 of murdered Rohatyn Jews were shot and placed in a mass grave. And she vows, one day I will return and I will sanctify your resting place. Through the letters that Rozia and Vilek exchanged, they planned the journey that she has to undertake. And she leaves Rohatyn on April 1st, 1945. And it takes almost 6 weeks for her to go through Lvov, Moscow, Tashkent, and eventually Kizilkia in Kyrgyzstan. She gets off the train. She's exhausted. And she sees two strangers and hears that they're speaking Polish. And she goes up to them and introduces herself. And they say, you are Rozia, Vilek's girlfriend? And she says, yes, where is he? And they tell her, yeah, you must have missed him. He went to Tashkent to meet you. You probably passed each other. Why don't you come with us to our place and you can stay there until Vilek comes? She goes, and Vilek's brother, Yitzhak, comes in, embraces her, and says, well, you must come to where we live. Rozia had learned through letters from Vilek that he described his living conditions as just a room with uncovered windows. She sees that it is just a room. It has two beds, a dresser. There are clothes all over the place, uneaten food, books, and dirty laundry. She wants to clean it, but she's so exhausted she just collapses on one of the beds and sleeps. She wakes up the next morning and decides, okay, now I will clean the room. She takes a chair, she gets up, and she had brought curtains with her, and she starts to put them up on the window. The door opens. Vilek enters, and he catches Rozia as she's falling off the chair. He embraces her and says, this is where you belong, in my arms. And they kiss, trying to make up for 4 years of separation. She had arrived in Kizilkia on May 8th, 1945, the day before Germany surrenders. And on May 9th, 1945, she and Vilek legalize their reunion at a local town hall, 2 witnesses, no ceremony, no rabbi, no family. And she signs her name, keeping Faust as her middle name. They had suffered individual horrors and wartime experiences, which were dramatically different from each other, and that created a separation, a distance that they found it hard to bridge and not fully understand. But their love had survived. Their love had endured. And together, they began to plan their future.
David, wow. How did that feel?
I need a shower.
I'm not surprised. I feel like you were totally in, and you certainly brought us in. Can I give you some appreciations?
Honored.
Honored. Yes, yes. Well, first of all, I wanted to say I know how much you put into this story because I've heard different versions of it, and that hard work completely showed tonight. Beautiful. You put in so many different pieces of your mother's life, and you created it so seamlessly, as if you were actually just reading her book, but you weren't reading her book. It wasn't like reading it. You actually told us as if she was telling us through you. You gave us excitement. There was tension, a little bit of nervousness. There was anxiety. I felt the longing. Oh my gosh, why must we be separated? Um, and of course, you've got great facial expressions and gestures, all of that. And I really want to call out as a storyteller. I like how you framed the story. You started us at the very beginning with Ruja and Vilek being separated. When will I see you again? Will I ever see you again? How can I bear it? And then you bring us 4 years later, and they're together and about to embark on a new thing. So you've framed the story in a way that makes it very, very meaningful to us. To we can really see the arc of the story. Thank you so much, Yasha Koach. I really, really enjoyed that. And I think just judging by the expressions that we can see here, that there are definitely others who feel as strongly as I did. Anybody want to offer an appreciation, or is there a someone who would? And you can type, by the way, now's your time. If you want to type something into the chat, I will save it later and transcribe it and give it to David. But I'm also looking for some words. So Kathy, go ahead. Wait, you're on mute, Kathy.
There we go. Okay. David, that was absolutely riveting. Um, I have to agree with Tanya. The way you framed the story was incredible. Starting it with them being separated and him saying, we will be reunited. We will be together again. And then finishing it with, this is where you belong in my arms. That was like right out of a romance novel. It was beautiful. Um, and just so well told. It was, like I said, it was riveting. It was beautiful. It was heartbreaking, but it was also powerful. And I gotta say that the blessing that that her father does to bless to bless Anna and her family for taking his daughter in, that was perhaps the most gotcha moment that it just seared itself into my mind. I I'm at a loss for words. Yashakoa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. That was beautiful. Do I have anybody else? There's Linda. Linda, go ahead.
I thought that was absolutely amazing, David. The story itself was totally riveting. And as Tanya said, the way you told it, the hand motions and your expressions just added so much to the story. It was like, you were really just out there trying to say it with all your emotions, and it came through absolutely beautifully. And one thing I also appreciated about your story was that, as well as talking about how horrible it was for both of them during the war and their separation, you really referred to people who helped them, those upstanders, who took her in, who helped give her money to get to him after the war. And I thought that was a really important piece of the story to kind of balance off all the horrors that are happening around her and that, they both endured, to know that there were some people who helped out along the way. It was a fantastic story, David. Yasher Koach.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Well, anybody else? I see some people that I usually expect to say, "Oh, Debbie, go for it."
Yeah, so
And
I'm new at with Teach the Shoah, and I've just been taking the course myself. But I think that you offered a wonderful example of what I'm aiming to do because I thought the pacing was great. There's so many ups and downs in the story, and the fact that it has this, to me, surprise ending. I mean, I just would have thought that the that your father disappears, a lot of people don't come back. So yeah, I was really engaged in the story. So thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie, thank you and welcome. I look forward to seeing you in this space again. Michelle has something to say.
Hi. Um, Absolutely what everybody said. Um, the pacing, the hand gestures, the way the story hung together. And I just learned so much from you. We usually don't give complaints, but my complaint is with love. You made it look too easy. It was so amazing. And so, of course, it's not a complaint, but you set a very high bar. And I learned so much from listening to you. People haven't mentioned you have done an incredible amount of research, just incredible. And I so appreciate that. And I wonder maybe on the other side, I'd be very interested to learn where you got information from and supplement. But thank you so much for sharing that. It was just a pleasure and a privilege to sit here and listen to you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And yes, we will give David a chance a little bit later to talk about his sources. Um, is there anybody else who wants to make a quick comment? Provide these beautiful appreciations? Don't forget, you can type them. I will be transcribing them and David will be reading them. Lynn?
There are some beautiful comments in the chat. And Shkoyach, David, that was amazing. I love this story and I love the way you tell.
So, David, before I open up your pictures, can you say anything about how you created the story? Meaning, um, why you chose these scenes or why you chose to do it in this way? Anything that was difficult for you or easy? And I know if you want, this is a good time to mention about the book too.
Yeah. Well, first, it goes without saying that I have to give really tremendous appreciation to Teach the Shoah. I I know that Claudia was there when I took the class, and she was a part of the sort of instructor pool. Tanya, you were the lead, and I know I made that comment at the very beginning because I think that Claudia may have said a story at the beginning as a demo, and I said, "How the hell am I supposed to be able to get to that point?" So I think that that's a common theme, so to speak. And speaking of themes, learning about MIT not as a university that I'd never be able to get into, but as the most important topic and theme, kind of helped me decide how to anchor whatever the story was that was going to develop. And to the point of what someone mentioned, um, my mom had kept a diary during her times of hiding and had hidden parts of it in different places, and she was able to recover what she had written. Um, I didn't learn about anything regarding the details of her story other than knowing I never had grandparents and coming to this country as an immigrant, being born overseas, and understanding that we were even a minority amongst our Jewish community because my parents were survivors and there weren't really any in the congregation that we belonged to. But in any event, I never really heard details other than seeing times when my mom would get very upset if something on the television, even remotely, had something to do with World War II or, God forbid, showed a picture of Hitler. She would run into a room, close the door, and I could hear crying. So I really didn't know very much of the details until I was 28 years old. And in 1978, Judy Epstein wrote the book Children of Survivors. And I went to a group session and found out that I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person who had immigrant parents who talked with a funny accent, who felt that they couldn't talk about things regarding what happened during the war and kept us all in the dark, so to speak. And it was at that point that I finally said to my mom, Mom, you can start talking about it. I'm an adult and I can handle it. But it wasn't until my dad passed in 1999 and my mom went into a funk that I said, I got to get her out of this funk. And I said, you kept that diary and you never translated it. You need to do that. That's your job. You need to do that because I need to know. My daughters need to know. People who knew you and knew that you were a survivor need to know. Whatever relatives we still have need to know. And so she embarked on it, and it took her 10 years. And in 2012 or 13, we published the book, Journey Through Grief, and self-published it because it was basically for my family and friends, and we kept her voice. We didn't. She made me promise not to change her voice, so she wrote in a very flowery sort of a way, and we kept it. But she also did Spielberg's Shoah Foundation interview, and I had 4 hours worth of taping that she had done. So, having helped her with the book, as well as sitting through and hearing that entire testimony, sort of brought me right into that world of understanding of what her story was. And what came across to me as Tanya was telling us, we needed to pick one theme that seemed to resonate. It was a story not just of survival, which was a miracle in and of itself, being one of 34 from several thousand. But the fact that this was basically a love story, in that my mom, as a teenager, was just hopelessly in love with my dad, and they were scheduled to get married a month before the occupation occurred. And of course, when the Russians retreated, they took my dad, and that totally demolished their ability to be able to become married. But I used the book, I used her testimony, and started to develop it. And as some of you who have been through Teach the Shoah know, it's scene by scene. And one of the most important things I had to learn, and Tanya was instrumental on it, Claudia, because I've told the story to Claudia a number of times, and Lynn, obviously, was the power of pause. The power of pause. And that was something I had to work on because I tended to, originally, as I say, being brought up in New Jersey, we used to talk very fast. We used to swallow our words and we talked very fast when we're from New Jersey. But slowing my speech pattern down and learning about the pauses, I think made a huge difference in how I was able to feel comfortable with the story. We started off with small, like 3 minutes, and then started adding more scenes to it. And I felt that it had to show a little bit of the horror that the town was going through. And that's where the scene of the rabbis and the leaders of the community up against the wall and the potential massacre of that. The fact that Anna Bachinska became her savior was a crux that I felt needed to be put in there so that um, we were taught during our course about the righteous people who were impactful on the survival of some of the Holocaust survivors. And my mom clearly had that with Anna Bachinska. Um, and there were so many other different stories about, yes, she was captured by the Gestapo one time and tortured and all that, but I felt that that didn't need to be part of the arc, so to speak. And then when I was working on expanding it to the close to 20 minutes, and I talked to Lynn and Tanya about it, um, we talked about the idea of finding out that my dad was alive through the letter and making the plan to travel. I had certain scenes in there about each leg of that journey, but it seemed like that might be too much. So shortened it to the point of where she gets to Kizilkia and gets reunited with my dad. So I would say that the majority of the information came from the book and the testimony that my mom had and conversations I obviously had with her through the years. Um, and that provided the background for it.
Um,
And I can only just express my thanks because as a result of the training, my local community, Howard County, Maryland, had a Yom HaShoah program this year, and they decided, it wasn't my influence per se, but they decided on their own that they wanted storytellers. So myself and two other graduates of Teach the Shoah were storytellers as part of the Yom HaShoah program. And I think it went over pretty well, actually. They enjoyed celebrating or remembering Yom HaShoah in that way. The word celebration probably wasn't appropriate, but you know what I mean. Anyway, but I felt honored that I had the capability of being one of the storytellers and doing that. So, and it so happens, just as a footnote, the Jewish Museum in Baltimore has asked that storytellers now tell their stories, and they're creating an archive of them there. So the training, I think, has now become very useful and very helpful in circumstances like that.
Wow, David, you have managed to take all of the lovely things we're saying about you and turn it right around onto Teach the Show, which is very sweet. And I like that you just mentioned that part about having more scenes because that's something that not everybody understands. David, you could have chosen one scene and made a 3-minute story to tell it, I don't know, around the Passover table, or you could have created a longer story or different scenes. And I think that is the power of what we're doing. I'm going to, Niana, I saw did you have a question? Because you're on mute, and
Yeah,
then
no, I just had two short comments. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I missed the beginning, but I liked at the end how you summarized and in a very succinct way, but you said they had very different experiences. This wasn't just lovey-dovey, oh, everything is fine. I like how you highlighted that their life experiences during that time also caused a lot of separation. So I got the feeling from your story how hard everybody worked. And I also want to honor you and say that so many times it's hard for family members to tell this, to speak it. And you were able to tell your mom. I mean, I had something similar that my mom just said, we didn't pay attention to it. It was a don't look at it, don't look at it. So that you were able to get her to focus and think about this in a way that she could share it is really remarkable. So thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, that was a very nice point about the hardship of the two
Yeah.
lovers. David, I'm going to pull up your photos because I'm trying to be mindful of the time here, and I know you've got some photos here that you really wanted us to see and to describe. I did not, oh, I did put some names on them, but do you want to say a brief comment about the photos?
Yeah, this is a photo. You know, interestingly enough, my grandfather, my mother's father, being the music teacher, Many times he wasn't paid like directly in money, but in services. And one of the families who he gave lessons to, the individual was a photographer. So they were able to get certain photos taken. I have no photos. You'll see one photo from my father's side, but I have photos from my mother's side because he was able to barter, so to speak, and get it. And this was a photo that was taken during the time when they were in the ghetto, actually. So this was circa around 1941, 1940, 41.
Okay.
And these two pictures just demonstrate how they were a couple. It's when my mother said that my father kind of in a roundabout way and not in a romantic way sort of proposed to her. They were going out on a date, and this picture was taken. So it's a wonderful picture of the both of them at the point in time when they were officially going to be together. And the picture next to it of them in the field was kind of like one of my mother's most favorite pictures of the two of them because she just felt that they had a love for life and nature and just it was a just a definition of their love for each other and how they were en enamored with each other, so to speak. Um,
What?
that's fine. This picture, that's not the official picture of the unfortunate situation, but it shows exactly that wall, the back wall of the synagogue, where the rabbis were hanging out, and where later on, unfortunately, they were abused by the Ukrainian youths. And next to it is the what's called the Kahila, is the Jewish Council of Elders, the leaders. That was them. As you can see, they're all wearing their armbands at the time this picture was taken, but they're the ones who were placed up against the wall with the rabbis during that scene.
Hmm.
This is, like I say, the only picture that I have of my father's side of the family. There's a side story that my father told that when he and his brother Yitzhak, who were dressed in the manner in which the Russians dressed them when they took them into the army, um, they had a cart with a horse, and whatever belongings they had and whatever pictures they had taken with them were placed in that cart. Well, on the journey to Russia, as my dad put it, gypsies had stolen the cart along with the horse, and so they lost all their belongings. And the only picture my dad had on his wallet with him was a picture of his mother. And that's the only picture I have. I don't have anything of my grandparents, my grandfather, or any of his other relatives, or even pictures of him as a youth, other than the ones that my mother had taken. But that was Clara Halpern, who, at the beginning of the story, knocked on the door and took my mother to the recruiting station. And this is the typical type of dress that my mother had when she was Darka Vasilkevich in the Ukrainian type of clothing. And that my mother went back to Rohatyn in 1995, and she did consecrate the grave, the mass grave where her parents and 3,500 Jews were murdered. But she made a point of going to various houses, and that was the Bachinska house where uh, she was kept safely in hiding. And the scene where she was in the abandoned place where the roof collapsed, that's the hiding place when she was liberated by the Russian soldiers. She actually found that the building was still there.
Amazing. Amazing.
And this is like the classic picture, and every time I see it, it's very just it's a wonderful emotional feeling for me because this was the picture that they had taken when they were reunited. And I think it's poignant and meaningful for me because it seems like they're looking towards the future. At least that's in my mind what I use it for.
Well, it certainly fits.
Yeah.
It certainly fits. I'm going to show the music picture because I think this is so important. And then after that, we'll give the closing slides. I just think this is so interesting. You have to tell this story.
Well, so in about 19, I guess it was 1913, a correspondent came over to Poland, and his task was to look at culture in Poland, especially Jewish culture. He was employed by a newspaper in the United States, and he found out that this orchestra performed at all the weddings and a lot of events, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvah, whatever you want to call it. And it's the Faust family, and they called it the Capella, which is orchestra. And these are really my ancestors. In the upper, I guess, towards the far right, the person playing the violin, that's David Faust. That's my grandfather. Right. And next to him is his brother, another Faust. And seated with the beard is my great grandfather, David Faust's father, and next to him is is that Faust's brother. In the back, playing the trumpet is a cousin, playing the bass is a cousin, playing the clarinet is a cousin. They were all Fausts. The only one with the white beard in the middle was not a Faust. But in testimonies from other survivors from Manhattan, they would all talk about the Faust orchestra that would perform at all these events. Interestingly enough, this is only one of maybe 2 or 3 photos that exist of the klezmer type orchestras that performed in Poland during the early 1900s. And we found out that various klezmer bands throughout the country, Maxwell's is one in Chicago that's very famous, when they would have concerts and they would have advertisements or brochures, they'd show this picture. And my uncle back in the 70s wrote to all these places and said, you know, if you're going to put this picture for your advertising of this concert, you need to give credit to the fact that it's the Faust family. So from that point on, in books, etc., where I come across this picture, at least they acknowledge that this was part of the Faust family. So it so happened that it's coincidental that because my grandfather was the musician and taught music lessons, that it offered the opportunity for my mom to be saved. But more so, the fact that this family heritage sort of continues for me. And whenever I see this picture, it brings that to mind. Plus, I get to see my grandfather, which is kind of cool.
Just awesome. It's so fun. And I think everybody here, when you go online for whatever reason and you start noticing klezmer music for any reason, I found out that's the picture that's gonna show up for you. So thank you. Thank you for talking about that. I thought that was just so fantastic. Um, I you already talked about your sources. I just want to remind everybody that we absolutely at Teach the Shoah develop our stories with primary source documents and records. So either your own family member or anybody that you're going to create a story about. It does not have to be a relative. You're going to be using memoirs, documents, letters, diaries, video, audio, testimony, things like that, just like David did. I see that it is just about 9 o'clock. So what I'm going to do here is show you a couple of things, and then if you have a question for David, we can ask him. I just want to be sure that you understand and notice that number to the bottom right of your screen. We have over 150 storytellers, people who have taken this course and have gone back to their own communities like David did to tell in their local Holocaust Commission events, or people who are doing a coffee house like this or doing other Zoom events for us. We think that you are the perfect people to be doing this work with us. Linda is here tonight, and she's going to be doing a coffee house in just a few weeks for us. And we also have on August 2nd, I'm imagining, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg will be telling for this. Am I right on that?
So for the Sinti and Roma program, we have Greg, who is telling the story of Christina. We have Emily Han telling a story, and myself telling a story
Okay.
and doing the history.
So same kind of program like here, except that so Linda's Coffee House on August 12th will be very similar to this, 1 hour. the sharing their stories is stories and some history, which is always fascinating. And you will find that you never actually know what you could know. There's always more to know. And if you are thinking you'd like to sign up to do this course, this is how I got to do what I do here, and Claudia and people on this call, Michelle and other people. We are going to be sending this to you by email, so don't panic right now about writing this down. There's a QR code there if you have your phone handy, but it's all going to be coming to you by email. And we're hoping that you will stay in touch with us and can email, call us at any time. I would like very much to give David a moment, though, to answer any last questions. It is 9:02. Generally, I like to end with some deep breaths and set aside this beautiful story in honor of Rozia Faust Halpern. But I also want to give David a chance maybe to answer any last questions. If you do have to go because it is after 9 o'clock, we are so appreciative that you came, and you will hear from us, and I hope that we'll hear from you. If you have a question for David, you can either unmute and call on him, or you can put your hand up and I'll call on you.
David, you referred to their different experiences, and at the beginning that caused them a problem. How did they fare with that? What was their communication style, and did they resolve it, or things like that? So take us into the modern time.
Yeah, my dad never really wanted to talk about anything. He kind of buried all that stuff. He was very much of a stoic. He became, when he came to this country, an engineer, even though he had been a lawyer in Poland, but Polish law doesn't work well in this country. But he became an engineer, and he had that sort of mindset. He compartmentalized, and so he really didn't talk very much. I finally got him and his brother together one time and had them talk through some stuff. But he was very much the unemotional one. My mother was more the emotional one. And so when it came to the point where my mom felt comfortable talking about it, I think that my dad just was very patient with her. He understood that she would get very upset, and he just tried to always level her, keep her calm. And I think that he felt that by sharing his stories more would upset her even more, and perhaps keep reminding her of the horrors that she had been through. So I think he withheld a lot of that stuff. And unfortunately, I didn't get to talk very much to him about it. But I do think that my mother always relied upon him to be the stabilizing, uh, calm voice for her that took her out of the panic that she sometimes would experience by remembering some of this stuff. Uh, he, I later found out, had been through a lot of hard labor, manual labor, and he never really shared that until I found out much, much, much later. And as well, he almost died from typhus, and that was something that, my mom obviously was horrified by the fact that he almost died from this disease. But I would say that their communication style was mostly my mother being very emotional and dramatic about things, and my father kind of being very kind of rational, calming, sort of steadying in that regard. Good question.
Great question. Diana?
Yes, this is something you've probably already considered, but it got a spark in my mind. Do you have the music that your orchestra played? Because I belong to a group called People's Music Network, and we're rewriting our mission. And it just sparked in me that one of our missions could be helping people authenticate and find what the music is that went with their families and their traditions. So
Well, I
where
find that you're almost like a plant. because I told this story to, I think Lynn, I told you, I'm not sure if I told Tanya, but when I was growing up, any relatives that my mother still was able to find who knew the family, they would sing this song, and they would go da 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 da, and they would start singing it,
Yeah.
and I was asking what it was, and they called it the Faust March. Well, at first I thought it was composed by my grandfather, and they did it. Later I find out that it wasn't. It's called Tosca po Rodin, and it's by somebody else. But they had adopted it, this Faust orchestra, as their theme song.
Wow.
So when the opportunity came for me to get married, um, I didn't tell my mother, but I knew the song because it had been repeated so many times. And I sat down at the piano and I banged out the notes for it and I gave it to a orchestrator who put it into four parts, and we had a quartet playing at our wedding. And when we finished the ceremony, as we're leaving, we didn't leave on the traditional music that they play when a wedding couple leaves. They started playing da 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 da. Well, you would have thought my mother had just ascended to the
Oh,
heavens
oh.
because she and the other relatives were starting to sing it out loud.
Oh,
So it wasn't an original song by the Faust family, but it was their official march.
So you have another MIT. This is a beautiful, beautiful story. And instead of saying it wasn't their original, this was their theme song.
It was
It's
their theme
okay
song.
that they didn't write it, but there's probably five or six other songs, and Henke Snetsky or some of the people in the People's Music Network who are Yiddish kites, people could help you put the rest of their repertoire together. And I'd be excited to help you try to find out more about that.
Wow. Yeah.
Diana, can you put your email in the chat
Yeah.
and David can
And,
copy it out? That would
and
be great.
yeah, and you know, it's again, it's going to make a memory stronger if we have the music, and
Oh, yeah.
that's people trying to do People's Music Network are trying to figure what's going to make our old music relative and relative to the future. So this is perfect. I will put my email in.
Well, you can imagine a scene in Chicago. I have a first cousin um, who was born in Poland right before they left in
Hmm.
1939. And she went to a concert of this Maxwell's Street klezmer band. And out of the blue, they start playing this Tosca po Rodin. Not because of anything, just because it was a song they had in their repertoire. And she
Hmm.
said she literally started screaming and saying and
Well,
went up to them. That's the Faust March. That's the
well, I
Faust
know
March.
Hank Snetsky is in my neighborhood, and I know that he started was one family that he researched, and went and did their music, and there are people that can help you do that. So thank
Wow.
you. I'll put my email in, and I I think I feel really good, even though this is really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember what I said at the beginning? David is going to tell one person's story, but you're going to see how one person's story can affect and involve so many other persons' stories. So I think this is a beautiful, beautiful example of that.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions before I let you go to, I'm not going to even ask Lynn what time it is in Israel. It is 10 after 9 here in where I am in New Hampshire. So it's probably a good time to let you all go off 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Oh my gosh. Oh my
I
God.
just want to say thank you to everyone who did take the time out of their evenings, regardless of what time zone you're in, but to be part of this. Appreciate your time.